Hey, welcome back, guys. Welcome back to another reaction video. This time we're going to be doing another one on Australia. And you probably heard of the Emu Wars. I've heard of it. I haven't covered it yet. Not reacted to it. I don't think it was mentioned in a couple videos. But anyways, this time we have how Australia keeps losing wars to animals. So we're going to find out what's going on with Australia. Why are they losing wars to animals? Original channel is OBF. I've done reactions to them before. Links to the original video will be in the description section down below as always. We're going to check it out right here and find out what's going on with these animal wars and why we losing. Australians are losing at least. We, the people, though, are losing to animals in Australia. News to me.
Australia is currently in the midst of a very serious war that's been going on for over a century against an enemy that is likely to win. This enemy isn't another country though, or anything along those lines. Instead, it's flightless birds, toads, and rabbits.
The emus, yeah.
Which is rather curious on multiple levels, as neither the rabbits nor the toads are native to this country. And the emus are just birds that can't fly. So how is this possible? Why is Australia in a war against something that shouldn't even be there? And why on earth has it been going on for 150 years?
Dang.
Well, it all started with the flightless bird, the emu. And this is where things start to get interesting.
I heard about this one, yeah.
It's the 1930s, and Australia, like the rest of the world, was suffering from the Great Depression. Wheat prices were falling, and the Australian government had to do something to increase food production in order to feed the population. So they went to the farmers and tried to incentivize them to increase production through promises of subsidies. It worked, and wheat production increased dramatically. However, the government fell through and never provided any assistance to the farmers, and to make matters worse,
So the government lies again. It's not just in America, guys. The government's lying in Australia as well, evidently. And they screwed everybody over and they started an emu war. Wow.
the breeding season for emus had just ended, which was a serious problem because
Big
emus
problem.
migrate after the breeding season, and they were therefore headed straight towards Western Australia in incredible numbers. And with a flock of up to 20,000 emus comes the search for just as much food. Luckily for them though, the farmers had a bunch of wheat lying around that they weren't selling to the Australian government in protest for not receiving the subsidies they were promised. So the omnivorous emus began destroying and devouring huge quantities of the farmers' crops.
Did the government send them in because of the protest? Conspiracy theory.
The Emu War had begun, and Australia was fighting against an invasive species they had to get rid of to survive.
Invasive?
So,
what do you mean invasive? I thought emus were from Australia. Is there something I'm not getting here? Let me know. I'm curious.
they put together what they saw as the most effective strategy that would make them the victors of this war. So what is the most effective way to combat an invasive species? Well, after some discussion, the Australian government came to the perfect solution: military force. Which was the prelude to the
Western Australia makes war on emus. Army machine guns are called in to help farmers at campaign, repel mobs of marauding birds. Wow. Okay. This looks like some made up shit, but it's real. This is history, guys. We're learning.
which was the prelude to the government agreeing to deploy 2 soldiers with Lewis machine guns and 10,000 rounds of ammunition
under the command of an army major
to eradicate the emus. Wait, 20,000 emus versus 3 soldiers with only
20,000 emus, guys. That's like as many subscribers as I have on this channel. That's crazy. That's a lot of damn emus.
10,000 rounds of ammunition? Yeah, that seems about right. And
Sure
so
does.
the trio was sent off to help the farmers, and they were allowed to assist them under the sole condition the farmers paid for food, accommodation, and ammunition. So in October, the soldiers were prepared to begin the extermination of the emus.
Wow.
3 soldiers, 10,000 bullets against 20,000 emus. It was going to be a walk in the park.
No, 10,000 bullets, 20,000 emus. Is that what I'm hearing right? Don't miss, and you might get half of them.
park. Or so they thought, because before the operation had even to be 3 soldiers, 10,000 bullets against 20,000 emus. It was going to be a walk in the park. Or so they thought, because before the operation had even started, they encountered an issue. And no, subtraction hadn't been invented back then, so the lack of ammunition and soldiers were...
Did they say subtraction hasn't been invented then? That can't be right. I heard something wrong, right?
Thought, because before the operation had even started, they encountered an issue. And no, subtraction hadn't been invented.
Subtraction, is that what they're saying? Subtraction hasn't been invented. I gotta hear that again, guys. I'm sorry.
Had even started, they encountered an issue. And no, subtraction hadn't been invented back then, so the lack of ammunition and soldiers weren't the problem here.
Okay,
instead, heavy rain had caused the emus to scatter over the plains, making them difficult targets to hit with the machine guns. So the attack was postponed to the following month. And on the 2nd of November, the act finally began. The soldiers had traveled to the small town of Campion after news broke that 50 emus had been sighted there. But since the emus were out of range, locals attempted to herd the birds into an ambush. But this instead led the birds to scatter in all directions. Yet still, the soldiers tried to shoot them anyway. But all in all, only about a dozen of the feathered freaks were killed that day. 12 down, 19,988 to go.
Wow, 12. That's it. 12 of them were killed. That's crazy.
And while the first day couldn't be considered a success, the soldiers were destined to succeed just a couple of days later.
The Major
had managed to set up an ambush against more than 1,000 emus that were headed straight towards them. With a machine gun ready, all was coming together. The gunners took aim, and when the birds entered their proximity, they started firing. Unfortunately for the bloodthirsty soldiers though, they once again only managed to kill around a dozen of the emus before their machine gun jammed, and before the gun was fixed, the birds were long gone.
I don't know what Australia's doing over there, but if you can't even fight some birds, good luck getting in a real war with people.
Another opportunity had gone down the drain. With only 20 or so dead emus on their resume, the mayor and his team decided to travel to the south of Campion to see if they had better luck there. The third time's a charm, right?
I don't know, but we're gonna find out. We're definitely gonna find out. I feel like this one wasn't the time. They were wrong. Third time is not the charm, I don't think, on this one. But we'll see. We'll find out.
I mean, this decision did make sense, as the emus were supposedly tamer around these corners of the country. So if there were a place they could succeed, it would be here. But unfortunately, they couldn't rack up the kills they were hoping for. However, they did make an interesting discovery. The flocks of emus seemed to have a leader who would be on the lookout for potential threats, while the others reveled in the crops of the Australian farmers. So every time the emu pack leader noticed the soldiers, they would alert the entire flock, who would then scatter in all directions.
Those are some damn smart birds, guys. That is crazy. And if you guys were smart as well, you'd hit like and subscribe so you don't miss out on any more videos. Hit that notification bell, actually. I do stuff on Germany, Australia, Netherlands, Belgium, Norway, all sorts of stuff. I'm learning Dutch as well. So if anything like that is of interest of you, please go ahead and hit like and subscribe. Only like 20% of my viewers are subscribers. So I don't know what the other 80% of you guys are doing with your life, but you're missing out. You really are.
Which, to be fair, is pretty clever. But the mayor was growing tired of this game of cat and mouse between his trio and the surprisingly clever and agile flock of flightless birds. So he concocted a new plan. If the birds wouldn't come to him, he would come to the birds. Seems
well, that's how you do it, right? You just go right to them.
If the birds wouldn't come to him, he would come to the birds. Seems reasonable, and so the decision was made to mount one of the Lewis machine guns to the bed of a truck, so they would be able to shoot the emus on the go. Brilliant idea, right? Well, you can probably see where this could go wrong. And go wrong it did. While 2,500 rounds of ammunition had been fired within a week, official records indicate that the number of dead emus only amassed to 300. The army mayor in charge of the soldiers even compared the invulnerability of the birds to tanks. Oh yeah, and one of the fleeing emus got caught in the steering wheel of the truck, causing it to crash into a nearby.
Wow. This would be funny to watch. Like, it just sounds so funny to just actually watch them out there trying to get these birds, man. That's funny. That is hilarious. I could imagine though. I mean, it's just like trying to chase a bunch of chickens, you know, like a flock of chickens running around. They're going to be scattering. It's going to be hard to do. That's awesome.
By fence. So the wheel of the truck, causing it to crash into a nearby fence. So the operation was deemed a complete and utter failure and was put on hold for a while, only to be resumed for a few weeks where they were actually slightly more successful. All in all though, the 3 soldiers killed just under 1,000 emus with the 10,000 bullets, meaning an impressive 10% accuracy had been achieved, which actually...
Congratulations, Australian military of 1920s or whatever it was. You guys need better aim.
Bullets, meaning an impressive 10% accuracy had been achieved, which actually, believe it or not, led a politician to ask whether any medals would be given to the brave participants of the Emu War, to which a Western Australian politician replied that if any medals were to be given, they would go to the emus, who have won every round thus far. Pretty funny, but he did have a point.
Wow.
But now what? The emus had to be dealt with somehow, and
now, did they make a special emu award medal? Even just out of being funny, that would be hilarious. I mean, obviously they didn't really make one, but like for funny reasons as a parody, that would be amazing.
He did have a point. But now what? The emus had to be dealt with somehow, and nothing had worked thus far.
Yeah.
So the Australian government did something crazy. They took inspiration from the Americans and began supplying the local farmers with ammunition and guns, and rewarded bounties for dead emus.
What do you mean took them? Did we do that? Is that something we did in the cowboy days then?
Local farmers with ammunition and guns
So
from the
American
So
farmers.
the Australian government did something crazy. They took inspiration from the Americans and began supplying the local farmers with ammunition and guns, and rewarded bounties for dead emus, which proved very successful, and in 1934, 57,000 emus were killed in just 6 months.
I see, so bounties. So back in the day when a cowboy was on the loose, you know, they would get a bounty, right? So I guess anybody could just kill him and get the bounty. So I guess that makes sense. I guess we did do that in the cowboy days.
Many thousands of emus have also been killed by locals since then, and the emu population in Australia is now estimated to be at a stable 600,000 to 700,000. So yeah, after multiple attempts, Australia did manage to overcome and win their first war against animals. Granted, it did take a few tries and multiple decades, but
and you had to get the civilians involved because the military evidently couldn't do it. That's funny.
They eventually came out on top. Although I guess the Australian farmers must have been in need of a new challenge, as it didn't take long before they introduced a pest to the Australian wildlife. You see, in 1935, cane beetles a pest must have been in need of a new challenge, as it didn't take long before they introduced a pest to the Australian wildlife. You see, in 1935, cane beetles were devouring large fields of sugarcane in the state of Queensland, which was obviously harming the output of the local farmers significantly. So in a desperate attempt to save their remaining crops, the Aussie farmers looked towards South America, where cane toads were being used to eat the worms and grubs that were causing trouble in those regions. And to the Aussies, these toads seemed like a super effective tool against the issue at hand. Therefore, it was decided that 100.
So what was what did the toads are supposed to do here? Hold on now.
So in a desperate attempt to save their remaining crops, the Aussie farmers looked towards South America.
The toads because of the beetles.
Where cane toads were being used to eat the worms and grubs that were causing trouble in those regions. And
And every time I've noticed that a country or whatever introduces another species as invasive, then they have that problem, and then they have to go, like that. They have to get the toads to fix it, and it's just gonna cause a bigger problem. Don't mess with the ecosystem. Let it be, right?
And to the Aussies, these toads seemed like a super effective tool against the issue at hand. Therefore, it was decided that 102 of these cane toads would be imported into Australia and set free. But quickly
102?
after setting the toads free, the farmers realized something. The cane beetles sat at the top of the sugar canes, and the cane toads sat at the bottom, which is a result of the toads not being very proficient jumpers or climbers.
Wow.
Something the farmers forgot to check before they set them free.
They didn't even check. So they just made their problem worse. Again, I was literally just saying that before they got to that point. That's funny.
Ultimately making the toads useless.
Yeah.
But there was another thing the farmers had failed to consider. The extreme sex drive of these toads. As in, they'll try to mate with anything. Apparently, scientists have found them attempting to mate with rocks, clumps of dirt, and human legs.
Rocks, clumps of dirt, and even human legs. Those things are not picky at all. Wow. Okay. They some freaky little toads, huh?
But another rather important detail is the fact that they mate all year round, and can lay up to 30,000 eggs at a time.
They don't
Worst
stop.
of all, these four-legged monsters have no natural enemies in Australia.
Not even nothing? Like nothing wants to eat them. No wild animals or nothing, huh?
Since they aren't native to this region, and due to the fact they possess toxic glands on their back, which is poisonous to virtually all Australian wildlife.
Okay.
So they were just left to reproduce without any hindrance. And reproduce they did, as the 102 cane toads from 1935 have since increased to an estimated 200 million.
Jeez. Wow. That's crazy.
And as can be seen from these images, the cane toads have migrated from small coastal parts of Queensland, where they were first released, into central and north Queensland, thousands of miles away. They've even crossed into the states of New South Wales and Northern Territory. And since they can travel up to 60 kilometers or 37 miles per year, no corner of the country is safe from invasion. With no efficient way of eradicating large quantities of these toads, they might be here to stay. The only thing that has ever worked was pesticides, which were used on them for a short period of time.
And that's chemicals. That's going to cause even another batch of problems.
With great results, actually. However, this method was banned when the chemicals turned out to cause cancer in humans.
I just said that. Did I not just say that, guys? Again, hit like and hit subscribe. Come on now, we're learning together. This is fun.
So yeah, it's pretty much the perfect invasive species, and with no signs of slowing its presence in the country, and with the cane toads invading more land for each day they roam, it's safe to say that this victory goes to the toads. It's now 1-0. But unfortunately for Australia, we aren't done, as there's one last animal I need to tell you about.
And we're just getting started, because they always save the best for last, as if it's not already crazy enough, right guys? Let's find out. Where's this gonna go? Camels, perhaps? I think camels are supposed to be like possibly an invasive species brought over from the Middle East back in the day. I don't know for sure. We'll find out.
An animal that is so unwanted in Australia that 3 fences totaling 3,256 kilometers have been built in order to contain it. It spans from north to south and east to west of the huge state of Western Australia, and it has one purpose: to keep this animal out. So what animal could this possibly be?
And which part is the animal in? And which part are they keeping it out of? There's 3 fences. It's interesting.
Kangaroos? Dingoes? Well, not quite. It's rabbits. That, once again, isn't native to Australia. Do you see a pattern here? Well, unlike the cane toads, the rabbits weren't actually released to eat bugs. Instead, it was introduced for a much dumber reason. I know, it's hard to believe, but hear me out. The British settlers became quite bored after a while, and therefore they wanted to hunt rabbits, like they did back home. After all, how much harm could a handful of cute rabbits really do? So the Brits decided to import 24 of them into the state of Victoria and began hunting away. But as it turned out, the Brits
How are you gonna there's only 24. How are you gonna use that to start hunting with? It doesn't seem like that would even be enough. I don't know. We'll continue.
of them into the state of Victoria and began hunting away. But as it turned out, the Brits weren't that good at hunting, and therefore didn't end up killing all of them. And when you don't kill all of them, well, the rabbits start doing what rabbits do best: reproduce.
Can anybody shoot in Australia? British couldn't shoot. The Australian army couldn't shoot in the 30s. The only people that could do it was the civilians. Hurrah to you guys.
Unfortunately though, it turns out the conditions for reproducing were optimal in Australia, as a result of
course. Why would it not be optimal for an invasive species to reproduce like crazy, right? Wouldn't be a genuine story, huh?
The conditions for reproducing were optimal in Australia, as a result of two crucial factors. First is the mild winters that meant the rabbits could reproduce all year round.
All year.
And secondly, the place at which the rabbits had been released.
Probably those toads are mating year round. The rabbits mate year round. The toads are mating, trying to mate with clumps of dirt and rocks and stuff. So they're probably hitting up some of these rabbits too, guys. They're keeping each other busy.
As this place happened to be the biggest agricultural region of the country, providing an abundance of food that fueled their extreme growth. Furthermore, the 24 imported rabbits were actually a mix of both wild and domestic breeds.
It is crazy how, like 102 toads turns into like 200 million. 24 rabbits turns into, I don't know, we're about to find out. I'm assuming thousands. It's crazy how it spreads from there. It's just crazy to wrap your head around. It really is.
The interbreeding of which created a hybrid rabbit that was exceptionally well suited for thriving in the Australian environment. And all of this combined meant that within a decade, the 24 imported rabbits had turned into millions. And the population of rabbits had supposedly gotten so large by the late 60s that 2 million could be shot each year without creating any noticeable difference.
Wow.
Sadly, because of this, the rabbits are suspected of being the biggest known factor in the loss of species in Australia. Many things have been done in an attempt to control their growth, among which include the previously successful method of shooting, as well as poisoning and trapping. However, the most effective large-scale measure was the introduction of the myxoma virus, and I probably don't need to tell you about the effectiveness of a virus.
This doesn't sound like it's gonna go good, guys. Let's find out.
So, in 1950, this myxoma virus was released into the rabbit population, reducing it from an astounding 600 million to just 100 million. Over time though, genetic resistance to this virus meant the rabbit population recovered quickly and reached between 200 and 300 million by the early 90s. They have since mostly recovered and are still thriving to this day.
With some busted up DNA chains and messed up cells in their body, probably from that virus. Is that good? I mean, is it spreading to other people? People are eating these rabbits, I'm assuming. Ugh.
I'm sorry, Australia, but this means the score is now 2-1 to the animals. And I hate to say it, but there might be another victory for the animals looming in the near future. You see, Australia is now seeing incredible hordes of mice roaming across the eastern part of the country.
Why?
And new conditions that came as the result of massive droughts followed by floodings have proven ideal for mice to reproduce, and so they've started breeding in the millions.
I'd rather have rabbits than mice. Just saying. That's disgusting.
Only the future will tell who's going to win this war, but looking at Australia's track record...
Literally, it gave me goosebumps, guys, just thinking about it. Wow. That was a lot of mice. We gotta look...
Only the future will tell who's going to win this war, but looking at Australia's track record, my bet is on the mice. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.
Yeah. Thanks for watching, guys. I don't like those mice. That creeps me out. Anyways, original channel, OBF. Wow. They didn't even mention the camels. I thought that was an invasive species as well. But I guess I'm wrong, so try to sleep after watching those mice, right? Have a good night. Take care. Have a super fun, awesome day.